Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. This is TCG Discussions. It's Marcus here once again. And today we're going to discuss a very interesting match that occurred between Joe and Micheal here. Joe on the left is piloting Blackbeard and Micheal is piloting Yellow Luffy. And there is a lot of drama surrounding this match specifically. And it's one of the reasons why we're actually going to watch this. That in addition to the fact that Blackbeard did in fact top our Nats, which that's what this is, Bandai Card Fest 2025 in Orlando, and this is top 16, so I think it is at least worth watching in that regard. But unfortunately we're not going to be watching this for the precise gameplay that is necessary to win games. In fact, we're going to be watching this for a whole host of reasons that are quite dramatic, honestly. There's some things that surround this match that are extremely suspect. To address one of them is the rumors that Joe was paid to throw this match. Now, this would be almost assuredly one of the biggest Mars ever on this game to exist. And the reason why people say that is the way that Joe loses. And I'm going to be 100% honest with you. This game is rotten to the core. I've watched it several times, and I can quite honestly tell you, the play here from both players is extremely questionable every single game. Now, Micheal much less so. He will make blunders and mistakes that are very sparingly or sparse throughout the match, but significant decisions that should cost him the game. And Joe simply does nothing about it. Now, let me just give some preamble context that must be understood regarding the accusations around this match, and that is to address Cross right here. Now, there are people who believe that Cross is recently a part of a scandal in which somebody named Rishi had bought a case of OP09 off of a buddy of Cross's named Batista. And because Rishi did not receive his product weeks after OP09 released, and there was some dodgy communication followed by a lack of a refund, Rishi decided to take action, in which he went to Twitter or X and posted a picture of Batista and Cross together. Because of this, which I believe Cross was playing in a Pokemon tournament in Canada at the time. Okay, so he is completely unaware of what was going on. But this dragged Cross straight into the middle of something that he had no business being a part of. And I will dispel the narrative right now that anybody who thinks that Micheal or Cross, as he's known by, actually had anything to do with that scam, you are wrong. And if it is influencing your opinion on whether or not he would do something like pay Joe to throw this match, you should check yourself. And I say that because I have personally spoken to Rishi in Discord, in which he has told me directly that he simply used Cross's notoriety in the community and his name call attention to his issue. This is something that was wildly irresponsible on Rishi's part and dragged Cross's name down with Batista. He told me this himself. So again, there are people who think that he's a scammer and he paid Joe. And I think that the first part highlights the tainted, biased opinion of who he is as a person. I've also talked to several people who know Cross, and many of them say that they can't imagine him ever doing something like this, and that he's a true competitor and wouldn't need to pay to beat somebody. And I would honestly quite believe that. I think that that is a pretty fair statement. Cross is the kind of caliber of player that ranks right up there with Jonas Abraham. Do you think Jonas needs to pay people to win? I don't think so. And furthermore, this is the last preamble praise that I'll give Cross before we get into whatever this match is, because it is truly horrifying and rotten to the core. Whether you like it or not, our current national champion of Onepiece, put some respect on his name. He did what nobody else could do in this tournament, and he did so in a fashion in that final round against Lucci that was executed very, very sharp, and he is a good representative for the United States at Worlds, and he is a top player in this game. So dragging his name through the mud in light of this match is quite honestly unfair. And now I'm not saying this because I'm his fanboy or that I am somehow infatuated with his gameplay and love him as a player. He's not even close to my favorite players in this game. He is a very good player, and I expect him to be here if, you know, his tournament life panned out in any good fashion, because he's just that good. Now let's stop with the pleasantries for a second, or actually I should say probably for the rest of the video, and get into why we are here. Let's talk about Blackbeard and BY before we get into this, because some of my subscribers and people who watch my content don't get it. They somehow think that Blackbeard versus BY is winnable for BY, and that there's something that they can do. Now, this is delusional on your part. This is one of the worst matchup spreads that currently exist in the game. This is so poor that Blackbeard beats BY better than Enel beats Dofi. Let me break it down for you. Going second, Blackbeard has an 80% chance to win. That is one of the highest matchup spread differentials in the game. And his going first matchup spread against BY is 60%, which is dominantly winning. 80% is so bad that you actually just can't win unless the Blackbeard player throws or loses due to breaking, in which he must not see absolutely anything and everything must go right for you. Joe will go second twice in this match and still lose. But we're not watching this because he lost. In fact, this is only going to be, for any education whatsoever, a masterclass on what not to do in the matchup. There are several things that raise the alarm for so many people. And if you think I'm just being paranoid and you think that I don't have the right to critique either of these players because I'm not sitting in one of the chairs, and I haven't, let me say a few things to this, and something that you may not know that would actually probably shock you. The first is that I am nobody at this game. I hope to be somebody one day. But to speak to my own credentials, I have topped and top 16 multiple card games before. Dragon Ball Masters, Yu-Gi-Oh! And I have qualified for Nats every single year of any card game I have ever played, with the exception of this last year for Onepiece. Simply because I went to only one regional, of which I'll be rectifying that, trust me, all year long. Among that, I have played the best players in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Masters. Gone through the fierce competition and gauntlet, so I know what it's like to be sitting in this seat. And as it pertains to Onepiece in particularly, if you haven't noticed by my channel, I'm exclusively a black player and a Blackbeard expert in my area, I would say. I am the only person that truly believes in this deck. In fact, I'm the only person that's truly willing to touch the deck because I truly believe it is that good. And many of my friends, one of which who is in my test circle personally, who has topped multiple regionals, agrees that I am very good with this deck. So when I sit there and say that Joe makes mistakes that just don't make sense, you won't even have to take my word for it, because here is the reality, and this is what may shock you. This VOD of this match was sent to people in the East who are Blackbeard players and have topped and won flagships and top CSs with Blackbeard, and they all say the same thing. This Blackbeard player is trying to lose. There are several things he does that are suspect. He attacks, for example, when he should not. He discards cards for his leader effect or off of other effects that he should covet. He stops attacking when he absolutely should, and he takes damage when he absolutely should not, and fails to covet key cards that he absolutely should. And I understand all of this, and so do the players in the East. They looked at this video and they are begging for the Americans to come bring this deck. They're begging for a repeat of this. Let me explain one last thing about the list of each player. Now, Joe's list is pretty standard. He opted for Tempest Kick over Jack, which truly only makes your Dofi matchup worse, but depending on how the filter works out with .Q, it could be fine. Now, meanwhile, Cross's list is very, very interesting because it is poised to lose this already unfavored matchup harder, and there are a few things that I can point to with this. The number one thing is that there are only 2 Ragos in the entire deck, and because of the way that Blackbeard works, if he doesn't immediately draw them, he's not going to be drawing or filtering to them anytime soon off of Sabo and Kuzans. Speaking of Kuzans and Geckos, those non-counter cards that exist in the deck, he's playing 4 Kuzan, and what are his 2Ks? There are only 9 of them. Now, in most BY lists, it's 10 to 12, and you can somewhat understand it in most matchups. But this one specifically is different than the rest for a number of reasons. You must usually use 2Ks in the matchup to take your own life. This is quite problematic because there are cards that exist in Blackbeard that are just too powerful to not have a lot of 2Ks. Burgess would be an example, of which BY has no ability outside of an obscure tech of 9-cost Kaido. This is very, very problematic and will create quite the problem for Micheal in the game. And furthermore, going into the late game, which will just get extremely odd in each game state, it will present a problem for Micheal for being able to counter out of cheap swings. And because there are not a lot of 2Ks, he will be forced to also counter off cards that he wishes to play to the board, truly creating a nightmare scenario for this deck that won't have any of its on play. Gecko Moria will not be available and will be a break in hand, along with the 4 Kuzans. Playing 1 to 2 2Ks would leave him with 8 or 7 in the deck against a deck that has 4 costs that will be swinging for 8 or 9. This is almost assuredly going to be painful. So with the preamble out of the way, let's get into this match. Now Joe decides to take second here. What should he be looking for? Should be looking for Liberation in the endgame. One of the best plays to have is Doc Q into Laboon. This alleviates a lot of pressure that the BY leader can use to swing a life. And additionally, is able to remove the 5 cost. Van Augur is much weaker in this matchup because his reduction is only 3, not 4, which is why Laboon is more coveted. Shigan is a massive card. It's a card that both in life and hand is extremely strong, especially once a Burgess gets established because it just makes him so much bigger. Quite honestly, one of the best cards in the matchup, along with Burgess himself and 10 cost each, obviously as your attackers and finishers. Now, Blackbeard should be looking to play this game passively, starving the BY player and not attacking so they cannot get cards in their hand that will accelerate the game plan and get them online. And by the way, online is simply able to heal. Because of this, coupled with the fact that he won't have on plays, the BY player is really pigeonholed and funneled into playing 1 card per turn. Furthermore, his characters are 5 costs generally, and this is rather costly in terms of Dawn allocation. So this is truly a nightmare situation for BY Luffy. Now, what should the BY Luffy be looking for? BY should be looking for Flambés. Should be looking for 5 cost Luffys that can take a life. And should be looking for blockers, Sabo blocker especially. Now, Cross is also playing 2 Shirahoshi blockers, and I believe an Ivankov to help out in the matchup. And we're not even 15 seconds in, and something questionable already occurs. Joe decides to pitch Laboon here. Now he gets a 10 cost each, but this is why it's so bad before we get into this next mistake here in the game. You're on the even curve. If Joe doesn't have a second one of Laboon in hand, which he does, this is going to be a problem. And furthermore, to top it off, if this wasn't bad enough, if he searches a Doc Q off of the Hachinosu and additionally can play the Laboon on the next turn and has a 4 cost event in hand and use this leader effect, he will be able to kill the Ivankov that has just been played at any 5 cost that Micheal plays. This will assuredly set him behind, so it makes it very questionable that he pitched Laboon in the first place. Now, I paused again because I said Micheal made a mistake. I don't even understand what is going on in most of the decisions made by these players, but Micheal seems to think he's trying to lose this first game. He does not attack here, and I just don't understand why. I don't know if this is to starve Blackbeard out of cards, but this makes no sense. This makes absolutely no sense because Blackbeard wants to get to the late game. Now, Joe's going to draw here, and look what's in his hand. The first card here is Tempest Kick, which the card he drew is at the back, it's not at the front. He had Tempest Kick during his first turn. He could have played the Dawn. Could have played it with the Dawn that he had, just to show you. Right, we're gonna pitch the Laboon. Let's search the 10-12. Right, there it is. Card he just moved to the hand is Tempest Kick. You should play it here. To play Tempest Kick anytime after this is to throw your even curve off. You might as well play it when you do an odd one play like this. And so that is to say that he should have used the Dawn to draw a card. Now here, Joe does something that is almost immediately suspect, and which is why I said this match is rotten, and he swings 5 into the leader. Now, I don't know if this is some kind of going second game plan for Blackbeard that is IQ 5000. This is almost assuredly a mistake, and it's a mistake at multiple levels. This is dangerous for your early and late game because the BY player can simply go wide with bodies while being 9k off of being able to play babies and bodies from life to the board. And if you're not ready for that, you can get ran over. Furthermore, he's going to snap take this because it doesn't require him to have the 5 cost Luffy to take his own life and accelerate and get his game plan online. This is why it is a mistake. And it is a mistake every Blackbeard player at this level should understand. This is top 16 of Nationals, and this is your most favored matchup. You should know this. And then he does something completely unacceptable. He pitches Laboon. What is going on here? I know people in the East that looked at this and said this is an auto throw, and it's only his second turn. This is a perfect spot to play Laboon. Now, Joe here shot himself in the foot by attacking. Let me explain something. If this Laboon is played and Joe had not attacked and activates leader effect, there is nothing that Micheal can do to protect whatever he plays. The Laboon and Doc Q will come down and kill this. And then whatever 5 cost he plays dies, I don't understand. An event will take this out, of which there's a liberation in his hand, and Laboon dot Q kills the other one. And he has both in his hand. He has the Laboon, the dot Q, and the event in his hand. Every Blackbeard player should be aspiring to do this early against BY. It puts them so behind. Just imagine if this Flampe wasn't here. The BY player has a decision to make, and he still needs to attack over the Laboon, and he still needs to take his own life, and he still needs to kill the dot Q. The pressure is too much. Instead, Joe searches Burgess and plays it. We go into Michael's third turn, and also curious, Joe doesn't discard here, because Sabo is almost indefinitely a punish here. He plays it, gets to draw into more 5 cost cards and filter bricks out of his hand, and then makes the entire board immune to KO, while stabilizing with blockers. This means when the 5 cost Luffy that's currently in his hand comes down, he's assuredly going to be protected when he needs to take his life. And that if Joe attacks him like he has been, right, on this next turn, he is then going to be able to take his last life safely with 2 blockers and double heal. At that point, Michael is well in this game. Now, one thing I'm also going to assert here, aside from Michael's weird gameplay in this game 1, Joe's deck probably through this entire match gives him the best outs possible. See, now we're using the Tempest Kick on an even curve, which is weird. And there it is. There's a dot Q. There it is. What is going on? Do you understand that this Sabo and Ivankov could just be gone? And I don't know what Joe's deal is, but this will become a common theme, where he just refuses to kill blockers, or force Michael to use them. But we'll get more into that when it happens. And there are far more egregious examples than this one. But this is a common thread line of play with Blackbeard that I expect him to know. And I'm sure the people in Asia saw this and were madly confused. And so we've got an event searcher here in which he's looking for a Burgess. Michael shouldn't need to read that card. He should know what it does. Now this current Burgess on the board is going to get big. But let me express why this is such a horrible mistake. Well, we'll get to this mistake first, but the mistake of Michael. Look at what's about to happen here. And we'll get to Michael's situation from what Joe just did here in a second. If Joe plays this Burgess here, he is still at 5 life. This is not going to be a winning position no matter what Michael does now. In fact, he's 1 turn of being passive away from the game being completely out of reach. Furthermore, look at what Joe does. He just attacks life again. Now Michael should snap take this because it's obvious what he should do next. Play 5 cost Luffy, take life, and heal 2, and swing 7. What do you think about it for a second? Which is more than what I can say Joe does in this match, which I'll applaud Michael for. He actually looks like he's trying to win the game, even if he's doing lines that in this first game are completely throw. Now, he doesn't play the Luffy right away, thinks about it, then decides not to. Attaches 2 to heal. And maybe the thought process is, I'm just trying to build the board. And he had forgot to attach his Dawn, so he does that. And he heals Rocket over Sabo top. But now we have a 7k leader with 2 life that just does not attack. Now this is just wrong, okay? This is absolutely incorrect. This leader has done nothing since the beginning of the game, okay? And his opponent is enabling him to win the match. Now, let me explain this to anybody who doesn't know much about Blackbeard, and anyone who's ever played against this deck in a level where they actually care about the deck and playing against it. If the Blackbeard player gets 3 Burgess safely on the board and then starts dropping 10 cost teach after 10 cost teach after 10 cost teach, it doesn't matter who you are, you've lost. It doesn't matter what deck you're playing, you've lost. The game is over. Joe is literally 1 teach away from being able to completely shut Michael out of the match. And there is nothing that Michael will be able to do from here. That is how terrible these lack of swings are. You can go ask anybody who plays this deck all the time. And this is including the fact that this is your worst matchup. So we go into Joe's fourth turn. Joe hasn't even spent a counter out of hand to keep that 5 life, which is extremely suspect, by the way. This is the first of many other decisions that have alerted me that Joe decided to either punt this game or throw. Or maybe he's just ignorant and doesn't know the matchup. I guess I can't say that. But I believe that this is a throw. Now there is a liberation in his hand, and there's another one right here, and there are 2 blockers. He has the ability to grab this card and play this one in this turn and kill this blocker. This is a common theme that Joe just will refuse to do, and it makes no sense. Now his Burgesses get a little bit big here, and he's going to do a good count of his trash, which is fine. He does a Lafitte search here, which is weird. The reason why it's weird is because down allocation wise, you're just better off swinging with a bigger number. The search is kind of irrelevant. You can also just use the Lafitte to search 3 more with the Hachinosu. Then Joe does something really odd. Look at what he uses to pitch for leader effect. Joe pitches Liberation in a situation where his opponent has 2 blockers on the board after passing up on grabbing another one. That is probably half, if not 2/3, of the ones in his deck. This is inviting the blockers to just live. This is inviting Micheal to be at 0 life and you not have the one tactic to punch through. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, when BY gets to 0 life and decides that a blocker is simply enough and that their 5-cost Luffy needs to be buffed to 8k so they can draw another card, or they use the babies to quote-unquote like play the cards out of their life and they go to 0 and they just have 1 blocker. And Burgess is like 8 or 9k already, much like he is currently right now. You could just turn off the blocker and then smash for like 15 through. This is assuredly a winning line for Blackbeard that occurs all the time. In fact, Burgess getting through after a 10 cost teach turns off the blocker. The one that's on the board is also winning a majority of the time. That is how much of a mistake to get rid of that card this is. Now, Joe swings 6 here. Micheal should just counter, which I believe he will. Actually, he should probably just take it. He shouldn't counter. He should just take the Luffy. I think he takes the Luffy, which is the right thing to do. He has the 5 cost on the board to take the last life and heal 2 again, so he gets to draw another card. These cards just kind of become a draw cycle for him. And he plays another Burgess. Look at this board. I mean, this is just gotta be the most intimidating thing I think I've ever stared at. There are 3 Burgess on this board, and Blackbeard is at 5 life. This passivity from Micheal, I cannot buy that he does not understand that he cannot be this passive. I cannot buy it. You're not going to convince me that Shigan out of life is the reason he has not attacked a single turn. This is insane, which is part of the reason why I believe that people think that this is a throw, because Joe just wins game 1 and then throws the other 2, and Micheal basically does everything to allow Joe to win game 1. This is assuredly throwing and punting the game, not attacking at any point. There isn't some curve knowledge, by the way, right, where you starve the Blackbeard player. It's not real. And look at Joe's board. It shows you that it's not real. The only thing you've done is allow Blackbeard to get to teach with 3 Burgess that are 8k in one more 1,000 power away from being able to challenge you every turn behind a 10-12 blocker. I digress. We're taking the life here, drawing a card. There's the Lafitte getting killed by Flampe. Now, Micheal is in a very big sticky wicket here. There are no other 5 costs in his hand, and there's only 1 in the trash. So that means when Teach comes down and spins the Luffy, he's basically going to have to take a life and a block. But Micheal does something here that is truly a mistake. It's really bad. So he attaches 2 to his leader. He activated the Luffy effect, so it's 8. He's going to give 2 Dawns, swing 10 over. That's fine. We'll let it go. We have 2 more. We're fine. And then Micheal attaches a Dawn to the blocker and swings 7. There is no reason to do this. There's not only no reason to do this, it is wrong to do so. Because Micheal knows that he doesn't have another card to heal in his life. And now, assuredly, you snap take this as Blackbeard. Because now we're just going to teach him every turn. And it doesn't matter. plays Shirahoshi, discards a card and heals the one Sabo. This is now losing. Now, if in the 10 cost teach line, right here, Micheal had left Sabo standing and simply swung 8 with the Luffy, yes, he would be at 4 instead of 3, and it would be much worse than what it is, which the reason it's this bad already is because Micheal has just refused to attack when he should. But what could happen is something that could allow Micheal to stay in the game. Blackbeard is going to swing 5-5, Sabo could block, and then could magnetize another attack for the Burgess to make it go down. And then if Micheal wanted to, perhaps he could double heal next turn, maybe hope to get some more attacks in a different way. But this match is almost assuredly lost. There isn't a deck in the game that should be surviving this. Shanks or anything. And it's just a very wild first game. We're going to pitch another .Q, use leader effect, make our Burgess 9. And it's a swing, and it's a swing. Now, Micheal has the Raigo in his hand, but it's all for naught. He does have a way to pull the Sabo out of life. He has a baby in his hand. And so he decides that he's going to Raigo. He's going to kill the Teach, which is fine. Attach 7. Play out the Sabo and swing, and then the worst thing that could happen here is a Shigan trigger, and he kills the Sabo. Joe here, this is the line I'm talking about. Now, there are several things to note. There are several ways that this endgame could have gone better. In fact, if the Liberation he decided to get rid of a year ago, he decided to keep, or way early in the game, without being overly dramatic. But the Liberation that he both passed up on and discarded in this situation would be damningly lethal to this BY player. This could literally make the Sabo blocker completely nullified, and he could swing 12-12 to the 7. That will not be possible to counter. It would cost 3 2Ks, and there are only 5 cards in Cross's hand. Or 6 maybe? The 2, there's 5. And Cross didn't have the counter anyway. Let's just pause real quick to summarize what this first game was. The BY player did not attack until the turn before 10 toss Teach came down, and 3 Burgess were on the board by that time. This was a guaranteed way to lose this game, 100%. It is so weird that Micheal would do this at this level and not understand it, that there wasn't a sense of urgency to attack the moment the second one came down, and that we simply waited until there was a third and it was far too late. Additionally, if he had been more aggressive, that Shigan trigger could have came way earlier. Perhaps it would have impacted the game and made it more dire early on, but maybe he'd still have the double block and be able to counter and do something. But assuredly, Micheal lost this first game because he did not attack. Now let's talk about Joe for a second. He literally got rid of cards that he had in his hand that assuredly spelled an auto loss in tempo for Micheal, and did the exact opposite of what you should do. This is a game where we watch BY never attack and the Blackbeard player always attack. Something is very wrong here, and it smells rotten in Denmark. And it's sad for me to say this, but games 2 and 3 are worse than this first one. Now, some of you may not be convinced of what I'm trying to say, and that these both players are playing into their own game plans and strategies. These are flawed strategies, if that is the case. They will lose you more games than you will win. There isn't a player in the East that did not review this and look at this and probably scoff in recoil at the play of Blackbeard. Now, this is not to dumpster and pile on Joe in his decisions. This is a masterclass on what not to do. That's exactly what this is. There are things that occur in here that will occur over these next 2 games that are so flagrantly bad for Blackbeard that there is no other conclusion other than a intentional colossal throw. Now, BY here opens up about as good as you could. Opens up Flampe Guard. And then Blackbeard swings 6. So it's obviously a part of his strategy to continue to swing. But there are several things that are different. It is because Micheal is now on the even curve that you assuredly cannot do this. Now, he may be 2 turns away from the Luffy, but the max punish to this would be to have another Flampe in your hand. He swings 6, plays the Vasco shot. Micheal draws, and has the best punish possible in this situation. Now Micheal swings 5. This is what I expected in game 1, but it never happened. Micheal went multiple turns, not swinging at all. In fact, by the time he swung, it was for sure too late. There was no hope of winning the game anymore. And now look at this, doing exactly what he should be doing. Now, this is going to be the biggest punish of this attack strategy I'll ever see in my life. Micheal opened up double Flampe Ivankov on the second curve. This is assuredly insane for BY. This, by the way, in case you're Blackbeard, you certainly cannot attack anymore. And I would hope that the person at top 16 representing the deck would know that. But then he just makes poor decision after poor decision after poor decision here. In it, there's only one way to conclude that this is just a throw. That this entire match is going to be thrown. That this game is getting thrown. Now he pitches the Van Augur, which is fine. Then he swings 5. Let me explain why this is wrong in every way. Black Yellow Luffy on the even curve is about to enter his 3rd turn at 0 life with 10 cards in hand. Most decks in this game lose to BY in this position. The only ones that don't are blue and have pudding in their hand already. You must understand how backwards this looks. This is actually inviting Micheal to have the best start possible. What's going to happen here is Micheal is literally going to be able to heal 2 life and play a baby next turn and take a card and play it to the board and be 7k with a blocker. This is insane to do. You're giving him all the momentum, and of course he takes it. He plays a Burgess and then does something that is just egregiously terrible. He pitches Shigan in this position. Now, this Shigan pitch is going to be something that Joe could have used to punish Micheal severely on this next turn, and we'll get to it when the turn is over. Now, Micheal, even though he's primed in this position to do extremely well, and there's a slight Pofar here, he drops some of his hand on the top 5 cards. Stream judge is there, so I assumed he checked it and made sure it's okay. And I don't think Micheal would ever cheat to try and get cards in his hand. But what happens here is truly a colossal blunder that Blackbeard should punish immediately. Now Micheal does the pitch and does the thing where he plays the baby. Now, this misallocation of Dawn is a constant theme. He has a baby in hand he's going to play. He needs to swing 8 here, and then he needs to play the baby, bring out the Luffy. The other thing that needs to be noted here is that Joe takes this life, and I'm not going to say that it's a mistake too, because I probably would at this juncture. Because if this is Shigan and pops this blocker, Michael's going to be in serious trouble. But that's neither here nor there. What ends up happening is that he's going to get this search, but look at what he didn't do, and pay attention throughout this match, because it's a common theme from this point forward. Joe did not look at his hand, nor consider blocking this 7k swing. And it's okay to take the life here. It assuredly is okay. But there will be points where this occurs, and you'll see what I'm talking about later as we go on, where Joe does this, and it just is nonsensical. Now, he takes this. What did he grab? Laboon, Liberate. He got the Liberation, which is what he should grab. So this is what I'm talking about. He left this Dawn back here. Makes him a 7k. Now this right here is a blunder. And it is time that I explain why. You remember that Shigan that he pitched? Shigan kills the blocker, makes Burgess a 7, stack 3 Dawn, swing 10. to 7. You're going to test the counter in his hand and remove the blocker. This is almost not even punishable by Cross either, because there's going to be somebody who thinks that he can get rid of the blocker and somehow stack enough Dawn on this Luffy to KO and swing over this. Micheal is going to be going into 7 Dawn, 5 of which will be used for the Luffy to pop, 2 of which has to be stacked onto this leader to heal because he's at 0, meaning this play cannot be punished. You can swing 7 8 into it. All you have to do is counter or block counter, of which case if Micheal doesn't play another blocker here, both of the life will subsequently go to the bottom of the deck. This is truly a position that the Blackbeard player needs to capitalize on here. What makes matters worse is there's another Shigan in Joe's hand. The one that he pitched, maybe it was because he had 2, but it's a coveted card in the matchup for this reason. Look at what it can kill. It can kill this Luffy. Now I say that because Joe's first reaction is to KO the Luffy here. Now this would be also fine if he could get the Burgess to 7 or 8 and still swing directly at life, demanding the blocker, because the counter would be too great. Currently in Michael's hand it would cost him a 2 and I believe 2 1s because he doesn't have 2 2Ks in hand. And this is a limitation across this list because of the 2 2Ks that were played to the board. Instead of stacking and swinging here, he's just going to play Lafitte. What are you talking about? Get rid of the blocker. Force him to use the block. Instead, he pumps Burgess up to 8, and then now it's only going to be a simple modest 2K to get out of this swing at the 7K leader, instead of just stacking 10 and making him wonder if he needs a block or not. By the way, if he gets this blocker, it's massive. Killing this blocker was more important than killing the Luffy in this position. And even killing the Luffy, still stacking 10 and asking for the blocker is a lot better, because there's no good way to punish the Burgess. And if he swings a big number at life, establishes a blocker, you can just block if you don't want to take it, and you still have Burgess. Then he gets another Burgess in his hand, decides what he's going to pitch, I believe, for leader effect, and pitches 10 cost each. Now, the Shigan that he played early in this turn milled 1. This is number 2. Are you really trying to say that there's a 3rd in your hand, and that you're only going to win with 1? What if he has Raigo? You have only 1 Burgess at this point. And then he swings 8, gets a 2K. This turn could have crossed the game on the spot, because this blocker would have probably had to die. This blocker, I don't know what Joe's issue is with the Vonkov, but he never gets rid of this card, no matter when he has the opportunity to. And it is just very, very weird that he didn't see this line. I mean, every Blackbeard player sees 0 life, just turn the blocker off, go. He also has a Liberation in hand as well, which we'll talk about on this next turn. But just imagine if it was Shigan because of what it would do to the Burgess, if he had just decided to keep the Shigan instead. This is again what I'm talking about. This is the second time that now he snap took. This is not the same scenario. Going to 2 when you have 2 turns to your 10 cost is dangerous, because if he gets you to 1 and his board's wide enough, this 1 can get pressured over the 1/10 cost that you'll have on the board. This is a problem. Joe doesn't even look at his hand for counter or consider blocking in this position. I don't even know what he could fear. What do you think is going to happen? But at 8 Dawn with the 2 attached to your 6, he's going to swing 10 over to your 8. You'll have the counter for it. You can block here and then make him use the blocker to attack over this. Otherwise, nothing's even touching the Burgess. You could get 1K counter if you attach all to the Garb, but you throw your entire turn away, of which if he has a salvo blocker, which I believe he does, he needs to play. And he also needs to heal, so he's going to pitch another card from hand. Never mind. He decides to play 5 cost Luffy. Discards Kazan. And then pitches. Now this is why it would have been an ultimate punish. Now look at this turn. Let's say this was 5 cost Luffy here, and he had another finger pistol. Now just imagine this turn, where this Vonkov is not here, and this Luffy somehow made himself an 8K, right? And he did the same thing. He would assuredly be dead, or counter so severely because there's no blocker on the board because he's already killed the Vonkov. This card is going to probably become a 9K. At 9 Dawn 4-5, it'd be a 9-10 swing. This will cost Cross every single card in his hand just to survive, while you still have the blocker. If you could have countered out of those swings. I mean, look how many cards he has. He's like 6 or 7 cards. This is just crazy. Again, you could liberate this card off the board and still go 9-10. This is a 5k leader. This is a 5k leader. You could still liberate this card off the board and go 9-10. What's he gonna counter out of the 9? Just play another Burgess. Don't even have to go to the 10, just swing the 5. But instead, he lets this card live. Counters a 1 here. It is fine. He needs to kill this card with liberation that's in his hand. And instead, what we have is a discard of it. What is going on here? And then we get Van Augur Burgess for play with a block. Now this position isn't too bad. What happens from here though is atrocious. And quite honestly, this lack of wanting to remove this card on Joe's behalf is truly annoying to me as a Blackbeard player. Do you realize how you could have just costed Luffy this game? You literally, forget the Van Augur, it is 9-6 at life. But he gives you 2 cards, because he gave you a 1, maybe a 2k. And the Sabo goes to the bottom, and he has to attach 2 to reheal. Now this is here, but this is gone. He has to play another blocker. He can't just put 2 up, which means the majority of his turn is going to have to be taken up by playing a blocker, which means he doesn't have a lot of pressure at your life. And then Joe just starts making decisions that just flabbergast me beyond all end. Remember also, if this liberation was the finger pistol, if he wanted to kill the Luffy, he could have. And he would have been stuck with the Sabo in his life unless he had another baby. But right on cue, when it comes to the 5-cost Luffy, we're going to be able to discard a card. We're going to get to heal. Heals up Rocket Luffy, heals up Sabo, plays Baby Luffy, makes his leader 7k, pops the Vasco shot. Looks at his life. Now, this next set of sequence, I can't tell what's in his hand, and through all my reviews of this game over and over again, I still haven't been able to tell. If Joe can counter out of one of these swings, he assuredly has to. What ends up happening, though, is something that should ring the bell of every alarm as the Blackbeard player. Now, when he swings 8 here, okay, and swings 9, and you have to take both of these. If, let's just say for Joe's sake, he's not being dumb and not just looking at his hand to see if he can counter. He's also not playing any mind games. You should be looking at your hand to see and thinking about it to make your opponent think that you have the counter. That's just like a little pro edgy tip. Now, the snap takes are one thing, but what should be going through your mind here? Or that liberation that we just discarded last turn. We should be thinking about going for a game because we don't have the ability to win anymore if we have to take this. This game is over. Okay. Joe is about to get into a bad position. Now, we're thinking about going for a game, correct? This is assuredly a card that we're going to need 100% of the time. Why are we not taking it? Look at this. He snap takes this life. Not sure if he has to or not. It's irrelevant. This liberation is going to be the key. It's one of the only things that is the key. And then wait till you see what he gets off of the Hachinosu search. Now, I don't know what Micheal is thinking here about what could be the situation. But bear in mind when I talked about him not liberating the blocker like a long time ago, okay? His refusal to liberate this blocker last turn is about to cost him the game. Liberate, swing 6, swing 9 with the block. You'll see how this game is going to be over shortly. Just imagine if this Ivankov was not here. And he just had another liberation too. So it doesn't even matter if what Micheal plays here is Sabo blocker. Which it will be Sabo blocker. I don't even know why Michael's taking the time to think about this. At least he's taking the time to think about this. But here it is. It's Sabo. There's a misallocation on the Dawn once again. It should have been 8. Now, here is why Joe should have coveted these cards, and why I don't believe he doesn't know this. It's one of the reasons why this matchup is so easy. Imagine that this Ivankov does not exist, because last turn, instead of playing Van Augur, you swung 6, swung 9, played Burgess with the blocker. Now imagine this card is here. You then have a liberation to turn this off. You can go make these 11 and swing 11, or make them extremely tall, because 2 tall swings here. If one tall swing gets through, the other one does. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And instead, without hesitation or thinking about this turn, he drops Marshall D. Teach. Please understand what I'm trying to say here. I'm telling you, Joe should have won this game, and Michael's tournament life ended right here. In fact, he's about to possibly get an out. He's going to Hachinosu search, where he pitches Hachinosu. And look at what one of the 3 cards is. Right there is another liberation. Now walk through with me with this. These cards can get pumped up to 11 by him pitching the right amount of cards to make them 11. In fact, he should be counting his trash real quick to confirm that they're 10s. Because if this is 11, he has 5 cards in his hand. If it's 1 away, that can make these 12s. If these are 12 swings, Michael loses. Now we'll see if he does some trash counting here. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 22. So the max that he can now get these Burgesses up to is 11, and he can liberate a blocker. The question is what is in Michael's hand, and whether or not he can stop 3 attacks, if the attacks are big enough. Now, assuredly, if these are all 1Ks, all of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now, Michael gets a test 10 swing here. 1, 2, 3, 4. The last card in his hand is a Sabo, which means he would have had to give all of these cards just to get out of the 11. Meaning Michael auto-lost the game if he had just killed this last turn, which he just refused to do the entire match. Furthermore, let's talk about this turn. He pitches these cards up to 11. Test 11 swing after liberating this card off the board, which should have been gone a long time ago. Test an 11k swing. 11 here is counterable by 1. 11 here is blocked. And because Michael would be out of counter, 7-9 would kill him. So there it is. And yet he windmill slams the Teach. Let me also explain why this is too hasty. So in case you're wondering, we pump these up to 11 because of leader effect. 11 counters out. 11 he has to take. 7 or 8 he has to take or block. 9 he dies. And this is gone. If this was gone last turn, which it should have been, this game is over right here on the spot. This Van Augur doesn't even need to be here. You could have just liberated again because he decided to pass up on his deck, literally handing him the win twice. And Hachinosu was going to net him the win again. This is just terrible. This is just terrible play on the Blackbeard player's part because he didn't stop to think. You can't play this card here and expect to win. The counter in his hand, I think, is like 1 2k and a bunch of 1ks, which means he knows that he doesn't have the math to survive. Look at what's on the board. This card spun doesn't matter anymore. And of course, Michael has Rego. He counters out. And let's look at it just to confirm. It's Burgess.Q, Lafitte, and this. Let me explain with the 10 cost Teach what that meant. 5 Dawn here, 7. Right here, 7. 3 Dawn here, 7. The game's over. Joe had to see this and know that based on his own hand. But he didn't even take the time to think about it. He didn't even take the time to work through if there was an out. He didn't take the time to assess that this was it and that lethal was on the board and that he needed to somehow make sure that he was not just punting the game. He didn't even consider taking the liberation both times. I mean, and this is what I'm talking about. This is refusal to do things that should win you the game. And this happens constantly in this match. Now, this last match is the most egregious by far. There's something that occurs in this match that just unanimously shows that Joe does not want to win. There isn't another way to see it. There are several behaviors here that are also very weird and kind of demonstrate a lack of understanding when it comes to just the cards that are present on your own board. Here we are going into the third game. I want to point something out that Micheal attacks the Lafitte here. This is on brand to what for what you should do in the Lafitte situation. Micheal also has an incredibly slow start. There's no Flampes here to take his own life. Again, if you're a Blackbeard player, you're literally looking to starve him in this situation. And it's going to result in you getting a win. I have no problem with the search for the Hachinosu. It's good here. Hachinosu play, we're gonna discard, and there it is. The coveted 5k swing to life. His opponent is already slow rolling, about to go into Luffy, so that's Luffy take. Next turn swing, Luffy take, awaken. Liberation is right here. Liberation is right here. Dock Q right here. We're on the even curve at 4. Dock Q makes sense if you have an answer for the 5 cost in Laboon. So him taking the Dock Q over the Liberation isn't necessarily bad if he has a Laboon in his hand. But don't worry, just immediately pitches the Dock Q. This is what we mean by not coveting cards. And look, he luckily gets another one off the top of his deck. So deck's like, nah, that was actually the wrong card to pitch. You probably shouldn't do that. And then we've got 5. 5 into the Lafitte, that's fine. 5 Dawn for the Luffy. Luffy takes life, sacks the Gecko to draw a card. What a hit. That's a very good hit for Micheal. And then again, Hachinosu search pitch Dock Q. What are you looking for? Why would you not even... You pass up the Liberation literally to get a Dock Q. When you pitch the Dock Q and the deck's like, no, you should keep the Dock Q, and in which case you just pitch the Dock Q. This is just crazy. About to go into 6. And don't worry, this is Joe Delatorre. We have every Shigan under the sun, even though it would auto-win us the game in many situations. And there's a Shigan of the Luffy. He gets 2 more. This is wild. Now this is going to force him to have another 5-cost Luffy, of which he does have in hand. He's going to be able to do a 7k swing here into life. But this is the kind of situation that I am discussing. And this is almost immediately a misplay from both players, okay? So Micheal decides to not swing 7 here, telegraphing that he has a Luffy to take the last life, draw a card, and then simultaneously use the effect to double heal, of which you want him to take this life. You've had to kill 2 Lafittes and you've had a horribly slow start. If Joe counters here and has 2 Burgess in his hand, this game can just be considered over. There isn't a way to win. This is as bad as game 1 all over again and then some. That is how terrible of a position Micheal is in. This is a repeat of game 1 on steroids. There's nothing on Michael's board. Furthermore, you're going to take the life, attach the Dawn, and heal anyway. Why are you only swinging 5? Because if Joe counters 1 here and plays double Burgess and then has 2 Teaches in hand, you are cooked. You're done. There isn't another way for you to win. You must swing 7 here, at least to get the damage. Now, Joe, it isn't wrong to take this life, but he doesn't even consider countering. He doesn't look at his hand. It's fine that he took the life, but he doesn't think about it. He doesn't try to think about it. But as I pointed out, if you get to 5 Dawn double Burgess and your opponent, like, you're still at 5 life with Blackbeard, GG, brother, it's over. Now, this is Joe Delatorre. I say that because there's a common theme. The dude's always got Shigan. Now this 5k poke here is fine. He's going to pitch a Rocket Luffy, which is good. We're going to get the Hachinosu Surge, pitch the Vasca Shot. We're okay with this. And Lafitte's going to be used for leader. And now we have Shigan on the 5 cost. And then we have Jesus Burgess. Micheal assuredly has lost this game. The next subsequent turns are nothing but 10 cost teaches. If you're Blackbeard in this position, you think that your opponent can literally not even touch you. You have Burgess with 4 life left. Opponent just swings 7, plays a Luffy, sacks a Luffy, and then he's going to play a Sabo blocker here. Or a Vonkov. I think it's Sabo. He gets a pitch to heal first. Get the 2. Now remember this one Rocket Luffy right here. You have Double Gecko, Flampe, Rocket Luffy, Baby Luffy. Rocket Luffy and the 5 cost. I don't know why we're spreading our trash here. Now, 10 cost teach spins Luffy. This is a problem. So we do the Hachinosu search. He pitches Luffy, gets a Burgess, uses leader effect to pitch the Burgess. Still 9, swings 2 over. Decides to let the Rocket Luffy go. There's 1 card here, but now notice that it's good. He still has to remove this card life to double heal. In which case there are no on plays, so the Flampe hand's not going to do it. This next play from Joe assuredly shows me that he does not care to win this game. Now watch this. This is heartbreaking to see for Micheal. He is clearly behind. This game should be over. If it's just teach from here, like this is over. Now he gets a top 5 search and whiffs completely. There isn't anything to grab, child or adult, which just really hurts in this situation. It's just a straight minus from his hand. It would have been better for him to pitch it as a brick to double heal than it would have been to just get nothing for the card and throw it in the trash. And to make matters worse, watch this. You can't make this next play up. Micheal swings 5 with this 12k blocker on the board without looking at his hand in an instant. It is instant. He takes it. What are you talking about? This is insanity at its finest for Blackbeard. You are inviting BY Luffy to destroy you from your insurmountable position by taking this life this way. There are nothing but counter cards and 10 cost teaches in his hand, and there is a 12k blocker right here. For the noobs that are BY in this position, who think that you can just go all in on this card right here without looking at this right here or counting the cards in Joe's hand, you're wrong if you think you can just attack any of these cards on the board, especially the teach. But this Burgess especially. Do you think you're going to survive a 13-14 shot from the leader in this 10-12? No, which means the block here is actually safe to do. Also, he'd be removing his own blocker from being able to block at this life if Micheal can't take the card away, which would be fine. Question is what if Micheal can take the card away? He can't get over this actually now because the leader swung so low. And that has been the problem with Joe. But this take, look at the manner in which he did it. There isn't a single shred of game state assessment on taking this life. There is no look at the hand. There is no look at the blocker. There wasn't even a second's hesitation between this 5k swing and this life. What on earth is in this life that you don't have in your hand already? The answer is nothing. All of the 10-12s he's going to need to win this game are already in his hand. Furthermore, your opponent does not have Raigo. And even if they did, you just lost value on the Raigo itself. In which case, if they did have Raigo, they would have to clear this and still attach Shudan. So it would be Raigo, attach Shudan, and then play a baby to get this out of life to be able to heal and discard another card. This would be a -3 to Michael's hand. No matter how you spin this is a major blunder. And unfortunately, it actually gets worse. Now bear in mind, he's at 3 life here. This attack should have never gone through. He shouldn't have even given a counter in hand, and we're gonna keep it up. Oh man, this is tough to watch. Plays Emporium of Vonkov. I don't know if that's Sabo. I think it is. I don't know why Micheal didn't do this, but he should play the Sabo here. I can't tell. That looked like a Sabo. See if we can see it. I think the card after the Rocket Luffy, that looks like Sabo. Yeah, that's Sabo. I don't know why Micheal wouldn't play the Sabo here. The Sabo is severely winning, but but this isn't gonna matter because this is actually going to be severely losing for Micheal here very shortly. So Joe does what he should do here and play the 10 cost Teach. Mind you, he should be at 3 life. This card should have just simply blocked. And again, he misallocated his Dawn, at least if he was going to do this play of 5-8, he should have at least attached a Dawn here. I don't know, again, what we're leaving the Dawn up for. And it's kind of error pings like this that could actually cost the counter properly of your opponent to win this game in this matchup. But nothing as egregious as what this 5k take was, okay? But what happens here, by far, is the definition of not wanting to win. This is just the most inexcusable thing I think I've ever seen on stream. So this is a 5k leader. Look at this board and this life. Mind you, there's only one Rocket Luffy still here, and there is a Sabo in his hand. I think this is also a Gecko, but look at this board. Okay, this is a 5k leader. We swing. Micheal should counter here, which I believe he does. There is not a reason to... The only reason why you would block with the Sabo is if you want the double block to go at it, so you have the card here, but you can't move the life, which is the problem. And then Joe does the most egregious thing ever, and he just passes. I mean, this is just completely confounding on every level. You should have 3 life, and let me explain, there is no attack pattern in which this card is moved and you lose the game. There is no attack pattern. There's only 2 cards here that can attack. These cards cannot. They almost assuredly cannot. This needs to be a 10-11 immediately, and I'll explain why. First off, the fact that this card didn't attack period is a atrocity. The Burgess is too big to not attack and should be attacking at this leader immediately. He does not have the counter in hand. It's Hiyori and like a baby Sabo, and this is, I believe, Gecko. I think there's another Sabo in hand, maybe. Even if there is, he's not going to 1 card in hand that's Gecko to defend this 10k swing, and I believe that this is all the counter in his hand at this current juncture. I believe that's where he gets Sabo. So I think what I saw earlier was the Gecko Moria. This 10 is not takeable, so this life is gone. This 12 is not takeable, so this blocker is gone. Now watch what occurs here, because Joe just simply did not attack while there's 4 cards left in his hand and all this other stuff. Look at the top card, the top 2 cards. 4 cards in hand, swing 6. We have a 12k blocker, stronger Shiryu, swing 6, Joe takes. Didn't even look at all of his hand, he just takes it. I don't even know what you think this life could be and why you would need to take it, but you're wrong. I'm not sure if this is overconfidence in the matchup and he thinks that he's just going to skate by with all this. This is stupid. Just block. Mind you, even if this was just 1 block, just give the 2k, and he should be at 3 life right now. This shouldn't even be remotely a lethal threatening position. Bear in mind, because watch what Cross does next. Oh, also, once again, right on cue. The deck tries to hand him the win with the Liberation, and he snap takes a blocker. Then Micheal does something that just defies logic. He takes his own Luffy off the board to draw a card and get rid of nothing. And without exception, there are only 2 cards in his entire deck that would be good for him to get, and it's this one of these 2 Raigos. Every other card he could draw here is losing. Even a card that could take his own life is losing, because the teaches are just too big. Let me express this again. This life is gone, and this blocker should be gone. That means this Raigo that's about to kill one of the teaches, after which he could have easily got a free blocker countered out too. This would leave only the Sabo and the leader to swing. This Raigo kills a teach, and he stacks 9 and swings, of which Joe could actually still defend this with the counter in his hand. On top of this, he would be at 3 and go to 2. This is precise gameplay of someone trying to lose the game. Swings 5. 12k blocker, 12k blocker, we're gonna counter. What are you doing? Why? Just why? What on earth are you thinking here? Why are we giving cards in hand? But now watch what happens. He Raigos a teach. and place 4 cost Kuzan. Because the BY would be at 0, he'd have to attach 2 Dawn, swing 9 at life. You could take that one, go from 3 to 2, and he has to double heal the 2 Rocket Luffys that are here. These are the last 2 5 costs among the 4 cards and the rest of the cards in his trash. Everything else is accounted for. Meaning when he goes 5, 11, 12 after playing this another TH with 2 life, this Kuzan's not here. In fact, it probably would have been pitched here, right here, to the trash for the double heal. This Kuzan doesn't exist, this Ivankov doesn't exist, this isn't here, and there are 2 life, leaving a Sabo and 2 life, because this card's about to get spun again. Look at his hand. Sure you, stronger. In 10 cost each. I mean, this is just absolutely incredible. And also, I want to point something else out. Even Michael knows something. Michael thinks about this more than he does. This Liberation could actually kill him here. There are only 4 cards in Michael's hand. He does not have enough counter to get rid of 1, 2, 3 of these big swings. He could make this an 11k. It could be literally 11, 11, 12, and he loses on the game on the spot if this Ivankov is gone and he liberates this off the board. These are the kinds of choices and decisions that I am talking about that Joe just refuses to acknowledge or make. Not that he has a liberation in his hand to do so. It's this incessant on just letting these key cards go early that make absolutely no sense. And letting cards like this stick around from the second turn of the game, or whenever he decides to play them later in the game, and not do anything about them. But this simple turn, sorry, just to go back one more time, this egregious turn of swing pass is complete insanity. It is, you're literally not trying to win the game anymore. And here we go. We're back at the position. 10 cost Teach has been Rygoed. This is Michael shifting through for the Liberation. For the record, he would die here if Liberation was in his hand, or Shagan to kill a card. 10 cost Teach is also extremely winning if he had 2 life, and had done the attack sequence that I talked about before. Three cards in hand. This is truly atrocious, bro. This is just absolute atrocious gameplay. I don't know what Michael is looking for here. There's the counter. 3 in hand. It's not possible. That's an 11. And again, he doesn't get the block. He pitches the 2K. Now, let me explain something here. This should be a game state where the Blackbeard player has 110 cost forward to block. He has 4 cards in his hand, of which one of the cards that he would have had to pitch here would be the Vasco shot. A 10 cost each, and 2 life. While his opponent has a spun Luffy, a Sabo, and the leader. It's losing. Now, if we went with the line that I talked about, and these cards are not here, this, and Volkov is not here. Either this Sabo is the last card remaining, if he had turned this Teach sideways, both of the Luffys, that are Rocket Luffys, that would have been healed here are gone. Or there is 1 life and no Sabo, meaning it is purely the spun Luffy and the leader. Again, it is completely losing. There is no victory for Michael in this game. This egregious in-between turn where he just passed was literally handing Michael the chance to get back in the game. And now Michael punishes this in a way that is completely unrecoverable for Blackbeard. Now he can discard, heal 2 cards, and play another Sabo blocker from hand, while swinging any amount that he wants. I'd also like to point out that Michael, again here, for some reason, is not allocating Dawn. And that again, while having 2 12k blockers on the board, he is deciding to simply not block, when he should be at 2 life, and none of these cards should be on the board. Remember, there should be either 1 Sabo or 1 life here, and this Luffy. And we should have a second Sabo, 2 Sabos, and 0 life. Or it should be 1 Sabo, 1 life. Now this is what's important. Remember when I said that his deck just like wants him to win? Gives him all the outs? He draws .Q, pitches .Q, look at the top 3 searches. 2 of them are liberations. So I'll spell this out one more time and why this is a resounding, convincing win for Blackbeard. So the 2 cards that are on the board are the Ivankov and the Kuzan. There are either both of these Sabos here or one Sabo and one of these lives. If both Sabos are here, one gets turned off by one of these liberations. And it is simply 11, 12, 12, 12 against a block. Death, death, death. There is no victory for Micheal here. It is a complete loss. This pass turn looks so obvious of a throw, it's not funny. There is not a single Blackbeard player that would not have at least turned Burgess sideways and wouldn't even consider whether or not you should turn the blocker sideways. You have to be thinking about these things. And there's no account as to why it didn't happen. He takes liberation. Micheal knows that he's won. There's no victory here. I mean, it's just not possible. It's literally not possible. Also, furthermore, let's say that there was 2 life here, because there should be 2 life here. The liberation he just got to his hand can kill this Kuzan. It's actually feasible to believe here that the 2 life gone, 2 life with the 3 in hand and the 210 cost may be enough to actually defend. I'd have to see the Dawn allocation split up here and do the rough math myself, which I have not done yet. But even that might actually be defensible, and then Cross would lose because there are no more heals coming his way and he has to leave his blockers up. This one right here, if he can counter out of this card's swing of whatever Micheal would put on it, that would mean that he could win the game, because the counter crack would be lethal. That is why taking that 3rd life was so important. At this stage, 2 life with the counter that I think that he does have in his hand, I actually think that he could win. He could liberate this card off the board and try, but instead he doesn't do that. What a game. There it is. Got 10. He's gonna take the life. Passes. And then in true fashion of not even trying to win the game, he's gonna swing after activating Luffy effect for 8. We're not gonna even look at our hand. We're not gonna counter out of anything. And then he simply decides to block 7. Swing 7, even though there's a 2 and a 1 in his hand. That match was rough to watch as a Blackbeard player on several points and occasions. Even if we played Joe's reckless live continuously attacking in the early game against BY, there were winning chances in every single game here. The game 2 line, the mid line, is kind of difficult to see and requires a lot of experience. But it's pretty basic once you understand the concept of being at 0 life, your opponent being at 0 life, and having only a blocker, and trying to shoot straight shot through with your powerful Burgess. This is a very common line to win any BY game. And just because it can be done earlier than when you have 10 on, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing it against BY, because it costs them too many cards in hand, or valuable cards later, especially when you had the blocker next to the Burgess to be able to defend him. Additionally, that 3rd game was literally handing Micheal the win. That was a position of authority. There were several things that just were completely backwards. Snap takes without even looking. This is trying to not win the game. That is what this is. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. A player trying to win looks at their hand. A player trying to win thinks about their plays. A player trying to win considers his attack patterns. A player trying to win does not pass over his best cards. His deck handed him every finger pistol under the sun to kill every 5 cost and made it easy. In game 1, it handed him Laboon, Doc Q, and Finger Pistol, or Liberation, one of the 2, to completely wipe the board early of Micheal and throw him to the wolves of being behind, on top of Michael's extremely poor gameplay of never attacking. I mean, this third game was approaching critical mass of game 1 on steroids. We had a 5-cost Luffy, double Burgess, possibly with 5 lives still going into Joe's 10 Dawn turn. What happened in this game, whether you want to say it was by intentional or not, is at minimum a throw. This was so disappointing. Let me tell you the context of what will happen here. After going on to win this round, Joe would have played nothing but favorable matchups for the rest of top 8 in matches against Lucci's. That's it. His only tough game would have been against Jonas Abraham, who in the next round played Lucci and lost, meaning that the BY or the Blackbeard would not have played Jonas. But almost assuredly, there is no reason Micheal won this game or match. There's no reason he won any of the games in this match. And he is our national champion. This is the biggest throw he is ever going to get in a break at the top tables. Or it's intentional. And I'm going to tell you, it looks super bad. It looks super bad. To make this even worse for Joe, and again, this isn't a video to dump on him. This is simply to say that on top of all the suspicious things of this match, he was interviewed for his deck profile as the only Blackbeard in top 16, I think, and only top credible top 32. And he was asked about his Swiss round, in which he proceeds to speak about BY in one of his games. And the person interviewing him makes a passive comment about it being his easiest matchup, to which Joe then gets super flustered, fumbles over his words, and says something to the effect of BY being harder than everybody thinks and that it's actually difficult. It's not difficult. Some of the lines that I talk about in this video truly are hard. They are lines, though, that I have already embedded to memory. There are lines that he should have embedded in memory. And there are lines that occurred in this game to win that you shouldn't even have to try to remember, like simply attacking with your 10 and 12Ks, for example, or immediately just getting rid of their entire board and making their life miserable, or, starving them of the entire game of cards so that you don't have to go through a boatload to get there. And knowing that Micheal has only 2 Raigo in life, certainly not attacking his life until you can get to your teaches. On top of this, with that post-game interview, this just seems like a cover-up. Maybe he watched his own game or something and he was extremely nervous about being put on the spot regarding it, but this is a nightmare. If this is truly innocent, then I'm sorry that we have just witnessed the biggest meltdown of all time. Now, as I said before, there is no evidence of the foul play accusations, but there is no mistaking that Joe threw this game. You cannot make the decisions that he made, or not make the decisions that he made. And what I mean by not making decisions, I mean not even thinking about the decision. He didn't think at all in this match, and it's not time. None. There was nothing. He thought about nothing. Snap takes without even looking at his hand. Snap takes without even blocking when he could. Like not trying to swing. Not trying to say that I need this card. Not realizing I can't play the 10 card. It's just issue after issue after issue after issue after issue. It's one thing when your opponent makes a few mistakes or a critical juncture mistake. Example of a critical juncture mistake was when Cross took his own life while the Burgess was sitting on the board with a blocker, putting him to 0 when he knew his opponent had Liberation in hand. Furthermore, his opponent had the best out, which was Shigon, to make the Burgess bigger. That is what we call a critical mass mistake or a critical error at a junction in the game. That is to be seen in complicated game state, and sometimes these things happen. But there's a difference between a critical error and a complicated line for your opponent to see, and just making blunder after blunder after blunder after blunder after blunder after blunder and not even trying to not fix it. I mean, there was no trying from Joe in game 3, and time told the true motive of the game. From game 1, nothing about this made sense. From game 2 onward, it just got worse. In game 3 was the biggest atrocity of quote-unquote high-level play we are ever going to see of Blackbeard. And Micheal went on to become the national championship after this game. There's an argument to say that the national champion should have been a Blackbeard player. There is a legitimate argument to say that. But yet we were tarnished and marred by whatever rotten gameplay was set before us by both of these players. Now, Micheal didn't do too bad in the grand scheme of things. Some of the punishes Joe would have had to see would have been very, very difficult. Although, as I pointed out, some of these lines are obvious. It's just not obvious to do them earlier in the game. But this is what it means to think about things with Blackbeard. And it's like, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't actually think I have a simile or another situation to compare this to. This is just absolutely wild, wacky, crazy gameplay. And I'm gonna let you judge for yourself in the comment section below why it happened. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Thank you so much for sticking with me through it all. And I look forward to making more reviews of gameplay. We're gonna continue with Blackbeard until we can get all the good high-level gameplay from the East on the channel. But I want to remind people of two things. Joe is a human being, so don't be hard on him. Maybe it's nerves, maybe it's something else. I don't know. But objectively, we gotta call a duck when we see it. And this was just a gigantic collapse across the board. And Micheal, same thing. There were several times where Micheal could have just easily lost the game because of decisions that he made. But he did pilot it, granted, given what his opponent was doing to help him win, I think the best that he could in most of the circumstances of this match. And he will go on to become our national champion. Just remember that he's also a human, and put some respect on that championship name unless you have evidence otherwise. The idea that he paid him to lose is crazy. But I'll let you make your own choices and decisions down in the comment section below and let me know what you think. Thank you so much again for sticking with me through it all. And I'll catch you in a much shorter one next time. This is Marcus from TCG Discussions signing off. Laters.